So today we're going to have a very interactive panel. We are relying on all of you to help us with this because I'm sure our three panelists and our moderator are absolutely terrified of speaking yet again on a webinar. So please, let's try and have it as interactive as possible. So who do we have today? We have Nicole Walker, and she is Managing Director of Arinex in Australia. Some of you know Rosalind McLeod, who is the CEO of Arinex, and Arinex are our partner, INCON partner in Australia and New Zealand and that whole region. And then we have Matthias Schultze, and he is the Managing Director of the German Convention Bureau. So he's just coming back from holidays, and we're going to leave all the talking to him because he's the one with the most amount of energy, it seems. And then we have Sherrif Karamat, CEO of PCMA, who I'm sure many of you have met at events around the world, and our very own Carol McGury. And she is currently our INCON co-chair, and she is the EVP of Education at SmithBucklin, and she is going to be moderating our session. Again, please keep on the cameras, and I'm going to hand over to Carol to moderate our session today.
Great. Well, thank you, Angela, and welcome to everyone. We truly have a global meeting happening right in front of us with so many individuals represented across the many regions, not only that INCON represents, but many others. And so for those who are up late, thank you, Nicole, and to your colleagues. For those who are up quite late and quite early across the globe, we really appreciate you taking the time to participate. But this is an incredibly important conversation. Many of you, I'm certain, have had local conversations about what is happening with events. What do you see the future looking like? And so these three experts with some input from, your North American here can offer up some thoughts about what we're seeing currently, as well as what we anticipate events will look like in the future. And so with this terrific panel, and I'm going to also ask Angela questions too, because she's terrific leading our INCON organization. We want this to be interactive, as she said. Please ask questions throughout. We will do our best to answer the questions and make sure that again, this is a conversation, not a presentation. So I'm going to start with one question, and I'll ask for one of our panelists to jump in. Maybe Matthias will start because he's got a lot of energy coming off holiday. But what's currently happening in your region? And as you look across your regional landscape, or Matthias, as you look across the global landscape, what are you seeing happening with events? And that could be anything from impact of COVID to technology to new formats. Walk us through what you're seeing and how it's impacting in your region.
Well, thank you very much, Carol, and a warm welcome from Frankfurt, from Germany. You all probably know Frankfurt as the host destination of one of our most favorable shows, IMEX, and I'm very much looking forward, hopefully, to meet many of you either at IMEX in the US or at least at IMEX in Frankfurt again, hopefully next year in May. Well, the future is such a thing. We are all thinking about the future. We are talking about the future. We are dealing with about the future, and it's starting at that moment. And currently, most of us, of course, talk a lot about COVID and what that means for the business events industry. But it's not only Corona, it's many other developments, and it's more or less an evolution, a transformation of our industry, which is taking place at the moment. And I'd like to share a few things with you from our region, but also from, I think, from a global perspective, which are important when it comes to business events in the future. One thing I just read this morning or yesterday again in the newspapers is about a very important invention, which is called the digital COVID certificate, which we have established in the European Union, which is covering 27 European countries and helps you to travel again. It helps to facilitate travel. And Conrad Clifford, some of you from Asia may know him, who is the regional vice president of the International Air Transportation Association. He said that the European digital COVID certificate should serve as a kind of a blueprint, as a global standard for how to organize and how to facilitate business events and business trips, especially in the future. So what we need to do in these days, I think, is to learn from each other. There's not one single solution which fits for all of us, especially business events, and those who are organizing business events have to learn from each other. We have now a call with more than 40 people here. We have 40 experts, not only 3 who are taking part in these panel discussions. We have more than 40 experts, and the challenge we all have in the future is to involve all experts in our industry, not only a few. And this is why I'm more than grateful that PCMA and IMEX helped us to establish an open innovation platform, which we call the Response Room. I just shared that with you in our chat, the address, the website of the Response Room. The Response Room is an open innovation platform for the global business events industry. Each of you can submit a challenge which he or she is facing at the moment, and the community helps you to solve the challenge. And that's key, I think, in these days. And that's what we learned over the last 15 months. It's not only how we face COVID or Corona and many other challenges, it's how we can co-create, how we can collaborate as an industry. And this is something which makes me really happy and glad to be part of a global community which helped each other in order to solve these challenges. And last but not least, I'd like to share another initiative which we started with many partners, not only in Germany, but also all around the globe and from other countries in Europe. We started the Future Meeting Space Initiative, which is an innovation alliance where we cooperate and collaborate with partners from all around the world in order to create best cases, in order to create new practices and prototypes when it comes to new solutions in the business events industry. And I'm more than happy that we have a powerful group of 28 European countries who started the Strategic Alliance of the National Convention Bureau of Europe, which is looking into the future. And we did, in cooperation with Oxford Economics, an analysis of how the business events industry may evolve and may recover over the next 4 to 5 years. And for those of you who are interested to learn more about the research and its outcomes, I'm going to share the details in a minute with you in the chat. So there are going on, many initiatives are going on at the moment, and my key message is only together we're not in it. We are not only together in it, but only together we can solve it. And this is why I really am more than happy that I was invited by my very esteemed colleagues from CPO Hansa in Germany, that they asked me to be part of today's panel, because I only believe in the power of collaboration more than ever in these days.
Matthias, thank you. And thank you for your leadership, not only in the region, but globally, for leading these research efforts in partnership with IMEX and PCMA. But again, what you have produced and your organization has produced with your partners, I know many of us have been able to leverage, and I'll look forward to also leveraging the response room. That is incredible, an incredible asset and tool for many here and others who we work with. Sherrif, I'm going to turn to you, and picking up on what Matthias spoke of, you have a lens, really a global lens, because of PCMA's footprint across the globe, and maybe you can walk through what you're seeing, currently with events and also the impact of COVID.
Sure. Thank you, Carol, and good day, everybody. Whatever time zone you are in, it's wonderful to be with all of you. I want to touch on about 5 or 6 things, and I'll touch on them very, very quickly. And they are pretty global. They're not necessarily North American centric or European or any other region. the first lesson I think that I've seen, and what we're acutely aware of at the stage that we're in, is that COVID has actually been an accelerator of trends that were already happening. And we saw many of that. And if I could point to one or two of those trends, but specifically one is digitization. And what we see based on our research and based on parallel industries, there is a lot that we can learn from other industries, not just our own industry, but collaborating with other industries. And the one that I look to very specifically is the sporting industry across the world. And secondly, the music industry and how they've handled how their industry was disrupted by COVID. The second part of that acceleration is the awareness of climate change, which we're now calling it climate crisis. And I'm not going to touch on that, but it's something that hopefully will come up in our comments later on. The second thing that what is unfolding today is the importance and the role that business events play in our society in general. And we're seeing that people are valuing their time much more and value what they do. So events have to be much more purpose-driven. And we're seeing that coming out loud and clear where people are not just making decisions on where they will attend, but why will they attend and what's the purpose of the event. So I think that that's a great outcome. So not to actually focus on the event in and of itself, but why are you holding that event? The third is that we're in a stage now, we're almost 2 years in. And the reality is that we have had to learn to live with COVID. And there is a distinct feeling based on the healthcare profession that COVID is going to be with us for a long, long time. And we must figure out how we will move forward in an age where we are very challenged by COVID and other things. And so subsequently, Matthias talked about how we're going to ensure that people are safe with a pass across European Union. However, there are many, many things that we can do that would dampen or tamper this virus. The one thing we don't want to happen is for there to be 2 or 3 other variants that continues to prolong the pain that we're all going through. However, we will need to learn how to live with this. The fourth that I wanted to touch on was what has happened before and what is happening today. And that is, there is an acute focus on the customer and the customer needs. In the past, because our events were such, if I can use an acronym, like a lingo term, was like a well-oiled machine. And we did events almost seemingly not to think. The design of events today is very connected to not just purpose, but to our customers and how they will engage. And that means online, offline, and ensuring that engagement is truly fruitful so that it delivers the value that the participants are looking for. Carol, I'll stop there, but those are some of the things. The one last thing before what recovery has been based on the sort of constant moving of the goalposts of our borders and rules and regulations. Recovery has been a little bit elusive, meaning that it is still happening, not necessarily by region, but by country, and in certain countries by city. So we are still climbing out of that, but I'm really, truly optimistic about the future. I feel that if there's one thing that digitization is doing, it's actually building the brands of corporations and associations worldwide, and it's making face-to-face even greater, but it's allowing for human connections and the purpose that we meet.
Sherrif, thank you. And having worked with Sherrif, serving on his foundation board for several years, he has always taken a both optimistic view of what's happening in our industry, but also a realistic view of what we need to do. And I applauded his effort, I believe a few weeks ago, where you asked for folks to get vaccinated and said, we need to get back to work. We need to be able to sustain our organizations and our events, and to put a stake in the ground with that. So I appreciated you taking a leadership role. Nicole, as I turn to you, I know you have many things happening in your region, and you could probably spend the entire time talking about both challenges and opportunities, hopefully in the future. Can you walk us through what's happening and what you're seeing?
For sure. Yeah, thanks, Carol. I think I'd just start with saying that it's quite reassuring to hear that the consistent message across what Matthias and Sherrif have said already, and what we are seeing or have seen down under, if you like. I think to touch on one of the points that Matthias mentioned, collaboration is key. And we have certainly seen a significant increase in collaboration across the industry within Australia and New Zealand in many different areas. And it's really wonderful to see that industry collaboration come together. And I certainly do hope that it's not quickly forgotten when we do move out of this phase. To Sherrif's point around acceleration of trends, I think that if there is a silver lining out of this, it really is that acceleration and the digitization of our industry, and the fact that we are able to use the pandemic as a reason or a purpose to start trying new things within our industry. We all know that associations are a little slow on the uptick. And so it's really pleasing to see that they're starting to adapt to those innovations. And they may not be innovative for a number of different industries, but they're certainly new and engaging for association conferences. And we have that opportunity to be able to be the leaders and the drivers in those new initiatives and the way forward. In Australia and New Zealand, we were given a bit of a taste of freedom for maybe 6-8 months. And unfortunately, the last 3 months, I have not left my house. So we have gone 3 steps forward and 2 steps back. I'm remaining optimistic that we are still progressing. But it was really pleasing to see the rate of change when we were coming out of restrictions, and how quickly people wanted to get back to face-to-face engagement. And, just before we started this conversation, between the 4 of us, we were talking about how the atmosphere in live events now is just so engaging, and it's a real enjoyment and pleasure to be able to go and experience those again. And again, I really hope that that's something that doesn't deteriorate really quickly, and that people appreciate the value of meeting with their peers and networking as well. So, we have seen that shift, and I certainly think that the technology part, the hybrid, the access to content is all going to remain in some part available for events moving forward. And we only have to stop and look at we spoke about the sports industry and the music industry, but the education sector as well, and how that has very much changed over the years, from a teacher in the front of the room speaking at the students. And now there is a hybrid style where people can engage online, and even teaching from home, which I have now become a proficient kindergarten teacher as well. They have the ability to connect virtually and physically. So there's a lot to learn from that education sector as well. So it's a really exciting time if you pause and look to what the future can hold for us. You're on mute, Carol.
I needed my first unmute of the morning. We have spoken on INCON meetings before about, just that engagement and coming back together. And I know you've spoken about both challenges, but again, the opportunities for the future. And so I applaud you and your company for all the efforts you guys are making to try to bring normal back and get it back soon. So thank you, Nicole. A few interesting statistics that came out of a study that I believe just announced yesterday. For those who know Freeman is a multi-billion-dollar organization primarily focused, well, they're digital, their brand marketing, their a lot of their services surround bringing people together in an exhibition format or in live events. They partnered with Epistemics, which is a software kind of data modeling company, and some really interesting findings. They surveyed over 5,000 organizations across 24 cities, which were, primarily heavy event-centric cities. And what they boldly said in their study, coming out of their study, is you are safer at an in-person business event that you are going to the grocery store. And there are reasons for that. The reasons are many of the people attending these in-person events are vaccinated. Over 80% at the time of the study were vaccinated. The infection rates, they analyzed during a period of time what was happening across the United States and then what was happening in these cities. And the infection rates were 95% lower at business events than they were in kind of the outside of the business events. And this came to, this was reality to me because I have a colleague who also serves on the PCMA board who runs a very large healthcare technology exhibition conference that was just held in Las Vegas in August. And they had, she won't quote me, anywhere from 15,000 to 20,000 in-person attendees. And they had 6 COVID cases. That is 0.0004%. So that is what we need to be talking about, to bring people back together, to be talking about the fact that, yes, we're not saying COVID doesn't exist, but you can do it safely. And it is not going to go away. As Sherrif said, we have to learn to live with it. So as we transition to our next question, I offer those who are joining us, please submit questions through the chat, but also maybe just give a quick headline of what's happening in your particular region. Just to maybe a few words. Are you seeing live events? Are you fully digital? What's happening in your region? If you can throw that in the chat, would really appreciate your input. So now we go to the crystal ball. We all have our infamous crystal ball that we like to look through to say, what does the next year look like? And so, I'm going to start with Nicole and ask, what do you think events look like in a year? And if you can be so bold as to say beyond that, I can't live past the next week half the time, let alone what the next year is going to look like. But, I'm going to look to our panelists to envision the future for us. So Nicole?
You know what? I'm the first to say that my crystal ball is well and truly broken. It has not worked for at least 18 months. So if anyone can find one that works, please send it our way, because I would love to have one that was a bit more effective than mine. But look, I think there is certainly optimism, which is the first time that we've seen that in quite some time, and that's really exciting. And I think now that we have spent the last 18 months learning to adapt, we can now focus on the development and the improvement of everything that we have learned. So, the digital transformation I come back to again is something that will continue to evolve. And an area where I think is really interesting, and I look forward to seeing the progress, is around that data mining, the access to data, and how you're actually going to use all of that data to make informed decisions and in a timely manner. At the moment, there's quite a clear distinction between the virtual side of an event and the face-to-face, and you can capture so much data on all attendees in the virtual platform. But as you start moving to more hybrid style events, how are you going to create the same value of data analytics for the face-to-face attendees and provide that to your stakeholders like sponsors and exhibitors and your client, that is similar to, if not of greater value than the information that you're getting for the virtual attendees? And I think, I would be keen to hear everyone's thoughts, but my opinion is that hybrid events are a lot harder to manage than fully virtual or fully face-to-face, because you're running 2 events basically in unison. And so how are you going to bridge the gap between the two? And I think the Tokyo Olympics was a really great example of how we can learn to morph events from physical to virtual and back again. And so there was some great takeaways and case studies that I'm reading up on around the initiatives that they used. And there's just so much production that comes into it. Which I suppose brings me to the next point around the makeup of PCOs and the industry's team members and what skill sets we're going to need moving forward. And that's certainly adapting already and will continue to evolve. But it will pose a challenge for the universities and what they're teaching them all in events management, etc., and how we can then make sure that we're maximizing that skill set into the future. I know Sherrif mentioned earlier about environmental sustainability, and that's just going to continually increase in focus, especially as international travel comes back, and what people are actually going to use when they're making decisions as to whether they are going to travel internationally. And, you know, especially from an Australian perspective, I really do hope that the decision to travel will still be there, but hopefully the duration of that trip will extend. I think everyone has proven that they can work from anywhere. So hopefully we might see people coming to a destination for a particular event, but then doing pre and post touring more, and also potentially working from that destination as well. So really maximizing their experiences. They're just a few crystal ball ideas, but certainly keen to hear what everyone else is thinking.
Oh, Nicole, thank you. Those were, you know, obviously incredibly smart points. The one that always resonates with me, given we are in the services business at SmithBucklin and rely on the services of our teammates and the skill sets required, certainly hits home, and how that is changing. And adapting the type of talent that we're looking for, as well as reskilling and helping to enhance the capabilities of our team is first and foremost. So very well done. Matthias, you have shared, I know, your crystal ball before. Can you shine it up a little bit and come back and give us some of your learnings?
Yes, of course. Well, I think it's, you know, the crystal ball itself is a nice thing, but we always have to try to be as evidence-based as possible. And this is the approach we really try to turn into reality. That means testing, creating prototypes, having discussions with our customers, and learning, as you said, Sherrif, from other industries. And there's another industry I think we can learn a lot from. That's the TV and entertainment industry, which can help us to better understand how to create those potential business events of the future. We did the research in order to better understand from a planner's perspective, from corporations and scientific institutions, what they believe will be the way people attend business events in the future. And that has not only to do with Corona. Corona is just an accelerator, and that would even have had happened without Corona, then it would have taken a little bit longer, but the trend is there. It's what you, Nicole, just called digital transformation, and it's taking place. It's taking place in our working environments since many years already. We built co-working centers, we built co-working offices. We have already identified that the way we communicate, the way we collaborate will change. And a congress or convention or a business event is just what we do in offices. We are working together, we are communicating, we are collaborating, and the way we do that will change. And the respondents told us that by the end of 2022, they believe that 74% of people attended business events in 2019 will return to in-person business events. So by the end of 2022. On the other hand, the number of people attending conferences virtually will grow by 40% compared to 2019. So that means the entire market will grow, business events will play an even more important role in the future than they did before, because they are now, and now it comes, the word of the words, omni-channel marketing tool, which helps us to run and to communicate with our communities for more than 360 days, 365 days a year in our destinations, but also on a global level. And therefore, we believe that the role itself, the power of business events will definitely grow compared to before Corona, because we learned to use it in different ways. And that leads me to another learning from the research we did and from all the conversations we had, that business events itself help us to change our travel pattern, our travel habits, because maybe we are now keen to go back to face-to-face events, but only to those where I have the opportunity to interact, to be a participant who has the opportunity to exchange information, to talk, to discuss, and to get to know people. If it's only to go there to listen to a keynote, I personally will decide not to go there anymore. And most of the people will decide. And we are only, and that's what I think is the difficulty a little bit of the business events industry. We only talk about those who are happy to return to meetings, but we are not talking about those who are not happy and not ready to return to events because they think it's too boring. There's not the right concept, and we have to take care of these people as well, because those who are ready to return, that's easy. That's how we call it in Germany. They are Catholics already. So we have to convince them to follow our ideas and our concepts. We have to talk and to think about those who are not ready and who think there are other communication tools which are better or fit better than, for example, a business event. And that's a little bit the way I would like to start the discussion, to think not only about those who are happy and ready to come back, because that's all of us probably, but we'll only go to these events where we can learn something, where we can interact, where we can connect, but only to go there and listen to a keynote or to get and collect some information. That can be done easily online.
Well,
I don't even know what to say.
I'm going to jump in on that, and I'm going to knit together what Nicole and Matthias said. And we last year, the entire year, we spent doing research. One of the major research output was the Compass report, which we did with our foundation. Thanks, Carol. And we partnered with McKinsey in doing the research. The findings was that by end of 2023, we will go back to pre-COVID levels. And so I want to touch on something both Nicole and Matthias said. One was on data and one was evidence-based. And some of it will be a bit of an indictment of our industry. So we'll talk about that in 1 second. First and foremost, we have more data than we know what to do with. Unfortunately, we are so into self-affirmation that we only ask the questions that give us the answers that we want. And so we need to be honest with ourselves and ask the right questions. And so what we have to be able to do is match intuition with the insights from the data. And what we are not doing, we have a lot of data, but we're not truly pulling the insights, especially if those insights don't agree with our own beliefs. So we've got to be honest with ourselves on that. The indictment of our industry is the fact that most of us are semi-professionals, and what we need to do is look at attracting others to our industry as we are going to lead this world, if we're going to use business events as a real tool to drive outcomes. And to attract that other talent, we will have to go outside of our space. So that is going to be a challenge, because many of those people are going to be smarter than most of us, but we need to attract those people into our industry if we're going to drive the value that we need. So when you look at business events and you look at hybrid events and you look at digital events, as something that Nicole talked about, I don't believe that events needs to be hybrid. I don't believe that events needs to be anything. It needs to be about the customer. And so if we need to have a completely face-to-face event with no digital components, so be it. If we need to have a completely digital event because that's how we're going to engage that type of audience, so be it. And if we need to have an omni-channel event, so be it. But we have to focus solely on the customer and their needs and ensuring that we're engaging them and focusing on the outcomes that they're looking for. If we do that, we will be successful. The size of our events, yes, as Matthias said, and as our research is saying, it's going to be bigger in the future. But I caution all of us that that's really not what's important. It is going to be if we're achieving the outcomes. Because if we're achieving the outcomes, our industry will be attractive and events will be attractive. Last but not least, and the crystal ball for me goes back to the fact that we are going to struggle with talent. And we are competing not with our industry, but every other industry today, because the type of people that we are looking at today are people that understand data, who understand data insights, who can do regression analysis, who are laserly focused on the members and the customers. And if we can find that talent, I will tell you, companies like Alibaba, Amazon, and others are also going after that same talent. So we've got a challenge there. Last but not least, and if we go back to the analogy of the sporting industry or the music industry or any other industry, we are where they are 20 years ago. And yes, we are learning rapidly, but we need to engage with those other industries, collaborate with them, engage with them and see how they've done things. They've got a lot of learnings that we can actually accelerate our learning so that we can be better to serve our customers.
So a lot to unbundle here, but a lot of commonalities across both Nicole, Sherrif, and Matthias' viewpoints. Building your product or whatever your service is going to be based on your customers' needs. Many organizations that we work with, as we counsel and coach decision-making around what do events look like, it's not to go back to 2019 standards and dust it off and now just say we're back to the good old days. No one is saying that. I didn't hear that from Nicole, Matthias, or Sherrif. There is optimism, but the optimism is around how do we deliver differently, new experiences, tailored to the personas or their customers' needs, but also meeting them where they purchase through the omni-channel approach. And I've heard several individuals, including my colleagues, talk about omni-channel and hybrid and how it really is multiple products. You have a live in-person product and you have a virtual product. Hybrid is really not a product delivery. It's some nomenclature that, for folks who think they can just take a live event and stream it out is not going to have the same experience. So appreciate all the viewpoints. Would ask folks, again, who are joining us here, offer up some of your thoughts in terms of what you see happening in the industry a year from now or beyond. And any challenges you think we face or opportunities, as we talked a lot about talent, what do you see happening in the talent landscape? I couldn't agree more with Sherrif about the fact that we have to look outside our industry in order to be able to adapt and grow and develop new products and services. We really need to be thinking about how do we bring the outside in and also keep our core, our strong individuals, but again, helping to retrain and develop them in new and different ways. So I'm going to end with one question, kind of, again, let's leave on a high note with the next few minutes that we have left. Sherrif, what do you wish for the industry? What do you wish, again, whether that's aspirations or just your personal view on what do you wish happens with our industry?
Well, let me start on a lighthearted note. I wish that all of us would get together, and I love red wine, so we can all have a glass of red wine or white wine or a beer, whatever you drink. But I just would love to see all of you just to have a drink and just to hug or shake our hands and just be together. Well, I would like us to own our value. And by that, I believe the business events industry truly plays a critical role in society. And I know that that may sound lofty if we weren't thinking that way. But what you do matters. What you do matters so significantly in communities around this world. And I want us to own that. I want us to own it in a way where governments are coming to us, not us going to them, and taking back our power. So I'm asking all of you, let us really focus on the purpose of why we do events, and let us live that purpose. And if we do, I think other industries will recognize the power of the business events industry, and we will have the seat at the table that we crave. We will have the recognition that we crave, and we will drive the outcomes that we are looking for. So that's my hope for the business events industry. And I think that we are sitting at a very, very exciting time. As challenging as the last 2 years, a year and a half has been, I feel that we're sitting in an exciting time because COVID has, in essence, allowed many of those that engage in our industry, given us permission to try new things and do things differently. So the future is up to us to carve and create. So I'm very bullish and optimistic about it.
Thank you, Sherrif. Nicole?
Well, I couldn't agree more with all of those points. And I really do agree that it is a very exciting time, and it's our future to take hold of and to develop into what we want for our industry. You know, I really just hope that we can all adjust and adapt to the new normal. And like you said, Carol, it's not going back to the old normal of 2019 and before. It is a new normal, and it's up to us to create what that new normal is. But I mentioned it, I think, in one of my first comments. I just really hope that we don't forget the lessons that we've learned and the benefits and the good things that have come out of it. The industry collaborations, the networks that we've developed, the openness to innovation and digital transformation of the industry. And, you know, I think that we can quickly, you know, I almost feel like I'm saying this from experience, but when we had in Australia and New Zealand those 8 months of pretty much freedom in our country, you know, there were no restrictions for 8 months. We very quickly went back to the way things were. And the first couple of events, the enthusiasm was there, the excitement, the atmosphere was palpable, but you then get back into your routine and you get very busy and you're rushing from one meeting to the next and one plane to the next. And you can easily forget. And so I just really hope that we all remember the key benefits and the key outcomes that we have all learned and developed together as an industry moving forward.
Thank you, Nicole. Matthias?
Well, I think one of the biggest challenge our industry is facing, and especially agencies are facing these challenges, is perfectionism. We always want to be perfect in what we do. Perfect. We want to deliver perfect business events for our customers, for the participants. But in these days, it's about learning. It's about being brave. It's about making mistakes and learning from these mistakes. And therefore, I like to quote a scientist, Charles Darwin, who said already more than 150 years ago, it is not the strongest who will survive. It's nor the most intelligent who will survive. It's the one who is most responsive to change. And I think that's what we are all we are all in the same boat at the moment. We need to be responsive for change. I know that we are, but let's be brave enough. Let's make mistakes and let's learn from these mistakes.
So I hear collaboration, continued collaboration, risk-taking, new normal, thinking again about what our customers need and want, not what they wanted in 2019, but their current aspirations and experiences, and keeping all of that in mind. Lots of great, I hope those who have participated with us the entire time have taken away some nuggets. I also wish for some questions to come in through the chat. And so if anyone has a question, we have a few minutes remaining. And while you're entering your questions, I am going to ask Angela. Angela, what's your wish for the industry?
Well, you know, from listening to what Sherrif was talking about, the carve and create, so I had this thing in my mind. You know, as we have progressed through the pandemic, we have seen a lot more competitors coming into our space, and that's going to continue. So what I would like to see is a mixture of carve, create, collaborate, and keep. I would like to see the industry keeping its position as being really the professionals in this space. And I would hope that organizations like INCON and PCMA and IAPCO and all the other umbrella organizations would help everybody on the ground maintain this level of professionalism. And maybe we can also be looking at that talent piece as well. So, you know, how can we, and I think that was one of the things we were trying to do with the INCON learning, how can we continue to learn so that we're able to compete with all the other people who are entering into this meeting space?
So I will put a plug in, as both Urian and Sherrif have said. PCMA is hosting its European Summit in Lausanne in October. We can all come together there. We can all have a glass of wine or beer or whatever your choice is, and continue this conversation for those who would like to participate. I'll speak for Sherrif here. Would love to see folks. If there are no other questions, I'll turn it back over to you, Angela, and thank everyone for their participation.
Thanks, Carol. So everybody, I'd like to thank you so much for your attention today, for listening to all of us. I would especially like to thank our panelists, Nicole, Matthias, and Sherrif, and of course, our dear Carol, for keeping everything lively and engaging.